Hey everybody, I hope you've been doing well. This is Justin, and in this video I'm going to be discussing the topic of existential thinking, abstract thinking, philosophical thinking, maybe get into the existential crisis a little bit. And to nail down a definition of what exactly existential thinking or an existential crisis is can be a little difficult. We have our standard definition that we can look up, but each of us experience it in our own individual way. These thoughts can be very scary, they can be very confusing, they can be very depressing, but on the flip side, they can be very enlightening. It can open your mind to a whole new world. Before the birth of Jesus up until today, many different philosophers and spiritual leaders and religions and psychologists, they all have conflicting opinions and ideas on what exactly an existential crisis is or existential thinking is and how to deal with it. Is it a spiritual issue? Are you chemically imbalanced? Are you over philosophical? Well, that doesn't really matter. What we're going to do here is basically just take the main ingredients of your existential thinking or existential crisis. And again, some of these thoughts may not necessarily apply to you, but the overall subject should apply, or it should be somewhat relatable to you. And you might hear some noise in the background. They're doing some construction across the street. I apologize for that. So we have these questions such as, who am I? Where did I come from? Why am I here? What is the purpose of all of this? That's one of the main questions we all have. And then the second main question that we have, which is I think equal to that question, is where do we go when this is all over with? Am I going to heaven? Am I going to hell? Am I going to be reincarnated and do this all over again? Am I going to shift to another dimension? Or is it lights out, complete absence of consciousness? Then you have individuals who look at life as life is nothing but pain, and then you die, so why have a purpose at all? Then you have individuals who question the very validity of reality within itself. Do we live in a simulated reality, or are we living in some type of matrix? So whatever these thoughts are, I think it's best to sort of look at the history of how thinking has evolved. So if you were born, say, before the Industrial Revolution, you probably wouldn't be experiencing these thoughts. Before the Industrial Revolution, in America at least, you didn't have a lot of time to think. From sunup to sundown, you worked on the farm, you did whatever you could to keep the crops alive, to keep your family alive. The only real respite that you had was maybe on Sunday, where you would go to church, and then after that, your butt's back over there on the farm. Well, after the Industrial Revolution, or during the Industrial Revolution, everybody started moving to cities. Everybody started congregating, living closer together, so they were able to share ideas and opinions, and now that we had machines doing work for us, we no longer had to work these long, strenuous hours. A lot of people went into 9-to-5 jobs. They had the weekends off. They had free time. Now, kids were no longer working on the farms either. So kids would come home from school, and dad's at work, mom's at home working. So they go out into the streets. What do they do? What do all kids do? They go and get themselves involved in a little bit of criminal activity, bust up some windows, bust up some businesses, do some theft. And where do they end up? They end up in jail. Now, back in that time, if you were anywhere from the age of 9, 10, 11, 12, and you had a criminal charge against you, you were going to jail. You were placed with the adults. Everybody was in the same jail. So during the Industrial Revolution period, as a result of not working so much, people had more time to think. So then they started having really productive thoughts, such as, man, if these kids are committing these crimes at such a young age, I don't think it's a real good idea that we're putting them in jail with 30-year-old murderers and people who are much older and adults who have committed heinous crimes. So that thinking was a result of developing the American juvenile justice system. And that's just one small example. I mean, really think about it. During the Industrial Revolution, post-Industrial Revolution, a lot of people had time to just sit and contemplate and make productive change. And that's why, women were gained voting rights, and they were gained more equal rights. African Americans were granted rights. They were granted rights, and that's just you have your little waves as time goes by, but basically what I'm getting at is now we are in the digital era, and a lot of us have a lot of time to sit and contemplate everything under the sun. And some of us even have the ability to do this at our jobs. You just sit at a desk and wander off into space. But during, I believe it was Galileo, he's out there in the field just pondering the universe, studying the universe, trying to figure out the universe around us. He obviously was an existential thinker. He had an idea that there could be alien life on Jupiter. And of course, we know now Jupiter may not be the most sustainable planet for life, but he believed Jupiter could harbor life. And when he would imagine aliens on Jupiter, he would imagine them in high-tech boats. And it wasn't really until aviation came about that we started imagining aliens in these high-tech spacecrafts. So, of course, you can argue, well, there's hieroglyphics on the Egyptian pyramids that depict what looks like spaceships or some type of aviation, but you get the idea here. So, we have a lot more time now to sit and contemplate things. When you're looking at your purpose, if this was before the Industrial Revolution, your purpose was pretty much just to stay alive, to make it to the next day, to make sure your animals don't die, to make sure your family's fed, and to make sure that everybody's healthy enough to make it to the next day. That was your purpose. Now we're subjected to an enormous amount of information. We're living in the digital era right now. We can contrast anything and everything. And that leaves a big gap, and we start asking a lot of questions that we still do not have answers for. And I myself do existential thinking all the time. And existential thinking used to bother me, especially when I would get into the, thoughts of mortality and the thoughts of my purpose and where I belong and just everything around me, questioning society and all of that. And now I feel like I'm at a healthy state mentally where I can do any type of abstract, philosophical, existential type thinking and be all right. And, I guess one example of mine would be alien life. I like thinking about that, of course. Outer space scares the hell out of me when I start thinking about it too much, but when I think of alien life, I think it could be anything of microscopic bacteria under the surface of Mars to, as we are here on Earth, we are conformed to what we know, what we've been born into. So all we know is that anything that's living must breathe oxygen in some form or fashion. Anything that does not live in the water breathes oxygen through the air, and everything that is underwater filters oxygen out of the water, and they have gills that filter the water, and they receive oxygen from the water. But I mean, it's possible that there could be alien life that it can breathe methane or any other type of toxic gas to us. I mean, every question is nothing is necessarily true. And if science has taught us anything, it's that everything is subject to change. And it's really tough to go day to day without having answers to questions that are very meaningful to us. I mean, nobody has really come back from the other side to tell us what happens, to tell us what to expect. And we are under the idea right now that we are going to have to face that or walk into that alone and discover that on our own. Scary thought. So when we look at our emotions of philosophical thinking, abstract thinking, existential thinking, or if you're right down there in an existential crisis, we have our past, and our past can affect how we are today. The past and everything about the past leads us up to where we are today. And we take that information and we figure out a way to hopefully properly process and deal with it. And then we take that information and we try to make predictions of the future of how we're going to be able to better a situation or prepare for a specific outcome. But the problem is that the future is completely unwritten, at least from what we know. The future is completely unwritten. So we can do as much preparation as possible, we can do as much predicting as possible, and we can have all of the information that will give us the odds that the probability of something happening will happen. But we can't even predict what's going to happen in the next 5 seconds. In the next hour, humanity as we know it could be completely done. Science predicts that millions of years away the sun is going to explode. Well, the sun can explode whenever the hell it wants to explode. And that's a scary thought, as we never know what lies ahead in the future. And we have to be okay with that. And sometimes we just have to be okay with the fact that there may be questions that we have that we're never going to have answers for. I'm not saying don't continue to go look for those answers, because I think existential thinking and philosophical thinking and abstract thinking is incredibly beneficial for humanity at large. Without that type of thinking, we wouldn't have breakthroughs in medical technology, we wouldn't have breakthroughs in technology in general that has improved our lives significantly throughout the generations. So, what this all boils down to is, if the existential thinking and these abstract thoughts are overwhelming you, take a break. Go back to a lower vibration in life and do simpler tasks. Don't distract yourself, and because that'll stress you out too, looking for things to distract you. Just stay productive, stay busy. Clean your kitchen, clean your bedroom, detail your car like you would pay $500 to have that thing detailed. Do a $500 detail on your car, and keep busy. And for those of you that are existential thinkers and it doesn't bother you, or it doesn't harm the quality of your life, then keep doing it. Keep going down the rabbit hole and keep looking for answers. Life is all about educating ourselves and growing, and that's my personal belief. But when it comes to purpose, I have no idea. I try to just live day to day and learn as much as I can and be as helpful and resourceful as I can to the people around me. That's pretty much the purpose that I run off of. A job is a job, and I just live life. I try to live it as simplistic as possible, but I must admit that my thinking is incredibly abstract. And there's going to be times, especially, and I don't know why, when you're in a difficult state of mental health, the existential thinking and the abstract thinking seems to be more frequent. And it can scare you too, because when you're not in a good mental state, it can really rock your world, and you can actually start believing some of the thoughts that you're thinking, and that can scare the crap out of you. So, this Earth that we live on is it's a beautiful planet, wonderful, and but we have no idea if by astronomical odds of billions of years of universal evolution we just appeared here and there's life, or maybe there's a God and we're here on purpose. But whether we're here on purpose or not, we do know that at least in this dimension, in this form, in this body, time is going to run out. So why not make the best of it? Under any circumstances that you might be experiencing, why not make the best of it? You can sit there all day and look at society as nothing but a product of slavery to consumerism, and everybody walks around like robots running the same routine. And yes, there are a lot of people out there that have difficulty with original thinking, and it can get a little stale and mundane, but if they're happy, they're happy. And for those of us who are a little more abstract and artistic, it can be a little difficult sometimes. Normal stuff. But I would say that, whether you're on the bad side of existential thinking or the good side of existential thinking, you're definitely a very creative person, and you have a lot of ideas, let's say. So, purpose, whether this is all on purpose or not, just make the best of it. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. If you wake up tomorrow and you can only reach 10% of happiness, reach that 10% and ride it like it's never been ridden before. Make the best of your life, and do well, and be healthy. Treat your mind well, treat your body well, and treat the environment around you well, because this is always subject to change. And we do know that time is running out. And unfortunately, most of us do not know when our clock will stop. So that's why I say wake up and make the most of it. Learn as much as you can. It's really easy to get stuck in these problems, and it's really easy to avoid these problems by having a lot of philosophical thinking or existential thinking to replace it. And sometimes that can contribute to more problems. But really wake up and conquer whatever you can. Like I said, don't have unrealistic expectations for happiness. If you can only reach 10%, reach 10% while working for 15%. And then work for 20% and so on and so on. Just make the most of this life. It doesn't matter if you're under severe mental stress. It doesn't matter if you've had your legs amputated or you are chronically ill. Just do what you can to make the best of it. Because like I said, whether this was on purpose or not, this was all provided for you. Even for the individuals that believe that we're living in a simulated reality or a matrix, you can move your hands. You can clap your hands as you wish. Do it right now. You have some type of control right now. You have some sense of control. So with that control, really make the best of it. Because again, whether it was on purpose or not, this is provided for you. The world is provided for you. If it's a simulated reality, it's provided for you. So take this experience, have this experience, and make the best of it. Feed your mind healthy thoughts. Make sure to stay active. Make sure to stretch your muscles, and make sure to keep working and moving forward. And I believe in you. I wish you the best, and we will talk soon.